Good evening and welcome back to the Terrace podcast. At the time of recording, this is Monday evening, 24 hours after the party atmosphere at Hampden was well underway. Someone who had an invite to that party, I didn't, was a certain Craig Anderson who joins me on this podcast. Craig, have you recovered?
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, and I'm sure there was a bit of a tongue in cheek there because it was billed as a party, and it was like it was certainly an enjoyable night in the sense of like there not being any stress associated with it and all of that, but it felt a bit like trying too hard. Like the big moments of the campaign all came at the start, and it's like you can't grumble about how you qualify, and it's better to have done it this way, but at the same time we were probably a wee bit robbed of that chance to properly celebrate it because as much as and I thought it was a bit OTT to be honest, like as much as they were trying to build up that atmosphere, it wasn't there. It has to come naturally, and it felt like every time the fans were starting to sing before and after the game, that was the moment at which they would immediately then start blasting out some music. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the night. It was obviously an entertaining game we'll go on to talk about, and I've been going to Hampden to watch Scotland for 20 plus years at this point. I mean, more than that when I think about it. I was there the day we qualified for France '98, and that was brilliant. I was a wee boy then when that happened, and then obviously we all watched it in a living room the last time. Like there was obviously the only Scottish people in the stadium were the players and the coaching staff when we qualified for the last one. So to just have the chance to be there and stuff is obviously quite cool, even if it wasn't in the fashion that it could have been. But yeah, it was nonetheless good to kind of give the players, I think, the send off, the round of applause and everything they deserve anyway.
Like you say, this was it's tricky. It's not a dead rubber, but it's a dead rubber. And it is the wording that Steve Clarke and the players used. I think John McGinn was really good post match yesterday. And we will get on to actually talk about the match. I do have a point here. But he said it was a strange atmosphere, but even the players felt that. But it's a strange atmosphere that they want to get used to having that early qualification. Where does, as you say, a guy who's been going to Hampden for, I'm going to make you feel old longer than I've been alive. Where does this rank? Where does this rank?
This campaign.
This campaign and this campaign, because I've been, last night was the only game that I've not been to during this campaign. And you see that party atmosphere, first goal against Cyprus. I don't even know if that goal had been scored in the chance we're going to Germany. So there's been that atmosphere throughout, hasn't there? But where does this rank for you?
Of those ones, it's the best one. It has to be the best one because it's the only one we've qualified out of. Like, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's. I think even historically, it's the first time men or women have ever qualified with 2 games to spare for a major tournament. So yeah, I don't want to call it an element of luck. Like some of that relies on other results going your way. But if you start the way we started a campaign with 5 wins, then 5 wins out of 8 qualifiers, you're going to be pretty hard going to ever kind of perform better than that. It's it's testament to the team that I think they have the opportunity to turn into kind of half-arsed, mediocre performances at the end of the campaign. They've given themselves that right almost. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of where it sits. So I think it's weird because I have kind of honestly felt a bit of an anticlimax with it all, but that's only because we had Spain, we had Norway, we had Georgia, at home. We had Cyprus. I mean, Cyprus itself even turned into one because it was like so easy at half time. But we had those big moments in the campaign that will be remembered for a very long time. And actually, last night won't be remembered very, very much, to be honest.
Well, that's good. That's fairly grand that that was the only one I wasn't at. And fantastic. We've got about 40 minutes to try and make a podcast out of a game that you didn't even really need to be at. So tremendous. Let's get to the doom and gloom then, because that's where Scotland are far better suited. And I think we'll get a rant or two out of you. As we say, they, of course, rounded off a rather special Euro 2024 qualifying campaign with a 3-3 draw at home against Norway. In case you didn't know, don't know where you've been the last 24 hours if that's the case. And of course, after salvaging a late draw in Tbilisi on Thursday against Georgia as well. We'll touch on Thursday's game, and the campaign in general as well. Probably all that jazz a wee bit later. But Craig, that 3-3 draw, as I say, a bit of doom and gloom to bring us back down to earth. Scotland now 5 games without a win, conceded 5 goals in the last 2 games. I think it's 14 in the last 5. from what you saw yesterday, and this podcast is very much, I'm very open to say about it. Didn't watch last night's game, wasn't able to be there, so it's going to be an education to the listeners and to myself. Will Steve Clarke at all be a little bit worried after last night?
I don't think we need to be at all. I think I've heard people saying, and I think I heard Craig say it on the other podcast, and I could understand the snapping out of the losing run and stuff. And yes, we would have preferred to finish it off with a win, but this isn't club football. You don't have games coming thick and fast. We don't have another game for 4 months, so I don't think. And I think the predominant thing, given that those games in 4 months' time are going to be friendlies to help us prepare for a major championship, I don't think the players are going to be dwelling on the fact that they conceded a last-minute goal to Norway when it made absolutely no difference to anything. So I don't think there's too much to be worried about, aside from the fact that the only thing he can worry about is something he basically can't control, which is Angus Gunn's fitness. That is the biggest worry. Everything else I think can be remedied. I think even it's incredible that we managed to be without our 3 best left back options at once. But it's not the first time either, because but at the same time, Greg Taylor had a stinking game. We might get onto that, but and as the
No, we will not.
Well, I was going to say, as the two members of the Greg Taylor fan club, I think I might as well mention it now. I watched Greg Taylor as an 18-year-old raw fullback, and he wasn't always brilliant. But I think that's the worst I've ever seen him play, and that's as an experienced guy who was playing the Champions League and all that now. I think.
So what went wrong? What went wrong? Because I came up into the office with I think Elyounoussi had actually finally just scored the Hampden, and they, as you rightly say, I'm as one of 2 members of the GT3 fan club, which I got made fun of last week for calling on the podcast. But it is the GT3 fan club. What went so badly wrong? Because that's the first thing they say to me. They're like, Amy, Greg Taylor's had a stinker.
Yeah, well, to me, there was issues with the formation to begin with, and that Scotland started with what I would maybe call a 4-4-1-1. It was really hard to tell. It was definitely back 4. Kenny McLean was playing wide left in front of Taylor, and for that first goal, Kenny McLean was anywhere but in the vicinity of that position, which left Taylor having to pick up the Bob, who was the young Man City youngster, who was very good, probably the best player on the park actually, or no, he wasn't the best player. Scott McTominay was the best player on the park, but nonetheless, he was one of the best players on the park. And Ryerson, who's the Dortmund fullback, so he was left with both of them, and he decided to pick up the winger, which left Ryerson a lot of space, and nobody went near him, and he slung in a cross, which ultimately, after a bit of footering about in the box, led to a goal. Second goal, the same type of situation. By that point, actually, John McGinn I don't know if it was a temporary switch, I think it was, but he was hanging out on the left wing. He didn't track the runner, and again, it was Taylor left 2v1. So I think as much as Taylor took a bit of flack for those 2 goals, I don't think he was to blame really for either of them.
I'm not hearing an awful lot of fault on Greg Taylor here. I don't know how this man is in the wrong here.
But what I will say is every time he had to do something defensively, he didn't. There was 3 or 4 occasions where it was he tried to anticipate a ball and tried to kind of step onto a tackle and ended up committing himself, and the guy went beyond him. There were 3 or 4 times where the fullback or the winger just ghosted past him. He didn't stop any crosses. It was just one of those performances where I've been a big defender in the sense of people saying he's not good enough for Scotland. I still don't think that's remotely the case, but at the same time, he is not Andy Robertson, he is not Kieran Tierney, he is not Aaron Hickey, and when he is not one of those 3 players, therefore he can stand out as that. And if I hadn't seen him play as many times and play well as many times as I have, you would be kind of asking the question, what's he good at? He contributed going forward, but anyway, that's something that's very unlikely. It's unlikely Greg Taylor, even if he's in the squad, which he might be, it's unlikely he'll see a minute at the Euros. It would be the only time I could think he might see a minute is if we'd already qualified after 2 games and he decided to rotate the squad. But the goalkeeping situation is the thing that worries you the most, I think, in the sense that we saw nobody thought Liam Kelly, apart from a handful of people associated with Motherwell Football Club, and not even their fans.
Not even Graham Pulis.
Yeah, thought Liam Kelly was good enough for Scotland, and we saw a very poor performance in the first half out in France. We then saw Xander Clarke did all right, actually. I thought in the second half of that game, it really wasn't really to blame for anything. Xander Clarke was very, very bad last night. The winning goal was, or sorry, the equaliser was the kind of peak of it, in the sense of he's massive. Like, why is he getting caught under a ball like that? And
Flapping as well. I think there was a video doing the rounds on Twitter that I did catch last night. Actually, it must have been out sort of after the highlights uh, that a cross comes in from the right, and it's clearly nowhere near goal, and it's going out for a goal kick. And as it's almost by the byline, basically, he then decides to flap and dive, and sort of like, you're like, what are you doing, mate? What are you doing? And I think we'll have all have seen your tweet as well. We are in grave danger, as you say. I know Steve Clarke can't quite control Angus Gunn's fitness, except Norwich maybe wrapping him up in bubble wrap. But my goodness me, unless, and if Craig Gordon as well doesn't come back as the Craig Gordon that sort of left, there's a lot of trouble there, isn't there?
yeah, there's just not another obvious goalkeeper. What I do think is, to be honest, that last night has probably played Robin McCrory into the squad, to be honest, because he hasn't had a cap yet, and by definition, we don't know that he's not good enough yet. He'll probably might get a
He's not
wee
good enough
nod
for
at some
club
point.
level.
But he's behind a good goalkeeper there. He's behind a goalkeeper who would be playing for Scotland, or would have been playing for Scotland last night had he been been Scottish, essentially. But I do think there's a situation there. Hopefully Gunn will be fine. Gunn's been a brilliant addition to the squad. But what that has showed us last night is, if we hadn't gone out and recruited Angus Gunn, given that Craig Gordon would have missed the entire campaign, we wouldn't have qualified. Not with Xander Clarke or Liam Kelly or Scott Bain or Ross Laidlaw or whoever else you want to chuck in.
I saw Ross Laidlaw doing the rounds. Somebody said that Ross Laidlaw was it a TikTok, like, folk who obviously haven't been capped sort of thing should be capped, and the goalie was Ross Laidlaw. I have to say, I didn't scroll any further. I thought, my goodness me, this has been made by the one Ross County fan.
But so that aspect, like, that's a worry. But it's nothing we can do about it. See, beyond that, like Jack Hendry didn't have his best game. I'm a massive Jack Hendry fan. Thought he didn't have his best game. Got bullied a bit, but nonetheless, the midfield was excellent. Like McTominay, McGinn, and McGregor. McGinn, I think, hasn't had his best campaign, which is a weird thing to say given how good it's been. But I thought that was McGinn's best performance of the qualifiers so far. I didn't see the Georgia game, but I think that was the best I've seen him play in this campaign. McTominay was just an absolute colossus. He's so big. He just, like, you just know the combination of being that size and strolling about the park the way he does, and he moves so, like, gracefully for a big guy. I think he is just getting better and better with every game. So lots to like about that. I thought from an attacking point of view, we actually troubled them quite a lot. We should have won the game. Like, we were better than Norway, but we gave away 3 cheap goals. And yes, like, okay, 2 of our goals were a penalty and an OG from a set piece, but nonetheless, like, there were a lot of things to like in that respect. In terms of the centre forward options, like, I think there's always that phrase.
Talk to me about Jacob Brown. Talk to me about a Jacob Brown.
I think there's always that phrase of, like, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So we should maybe leave it there on Jacob Brown.
Your mum brought you up well.
I had high hopes. I didn't have high hopes for him, but I did actually think people were maybe being a bit harsh on him, in the sense that he's young. I think he's 24, so he's younger than any of the other attacking options. He's come in to the squad as a fairly young player. He's been getting minutes here and there. Meanwhile, his club career's been on a pretty upwardly mobile trajectory. He's gone from, like, I think he was playing in League One at one point, and he's come up, and he's now playing the Premier League, and he's played, okay, looking at the best team. He's playing most weeks for them. He certainly started quite a few games after getting that move. So you think, right, this guy must have something about him. My first thought when he stepped out into the park is, you are much smaller than I thought you were.
He's tiny. He is tiny. Was he standing next to Scott McTominay, though?
That may possibly was. And the other thing I thought as I started watching him play is, like, every time he got the ball, he was trying to do the right things that a centre forward should do. Like, the things you see Shea Adams do, the things you see Lyndon Dykes do, he was doing them all, or he was trying to do them all, but nothing came off for him all night. And it was just like, you felt for him, because he was trying his heart out. There was no doubt about that. And to the point where he was kind of in danger of almost getting himself into a bit of bother, because there was a moment where he lunged, like, full length after a ball, because I think he just fluffed a chance. and then he kind of went hearing about, and the referee had to basically kind of tell him to chill out, because I think he made a full kind of body length dive and didn't make
Trying so
contact with
hard, he's going to
anything.
hurt himself, exactly,
Yeah,
aye.
and then that was at the point where he get taken off, and I think he's potentially played himself out of played himself down the pecking order almost. And that's the thing. If you take that, so that's why I don't think Clarke will have too much to worry about, because if you take that performance last night, where there were still some positive aspects of it, and you chuck Ryan Porteous back into the team, Kieran Tierney, Andy Robertson, Aaron Hickey, and then either Shea Adams or Lyndon Dykes into that team, that doesn't
We're back to winning
happen.
the thing.
And sorry, and any goalkeeper that's actually a goalkeeper, and then it's a completely different situation. And as much as I think there's always a chance you'll be missing a key player for the tournament, you're not going to be missing surely like all of them the way we were for these games.
Speaking about you're speaking about key players there, and I noted that you singled. Like, I know you mentioned all three, but you really put a lot of emphasis on Scott McTominay and a fair bit of emphasis on John McGinn. And I seen that once again, Callum McGregor picked up a player of the match last night. Now, do you think because of the snazziness, the goals, just the general sexiness of McTominay and McGinn, that Callum McGregor is going a little bit underappreciated in the Scotland?
I mean, you've just said he won man of the match, so he's obviously
Aye,
been
but that's
appreciated.
by like the Tannoy or something, or James McFadden.
But yeah, no,
His
I mean,
mum.
McGregor. The one thing I'll say with McGregor is the most baffling thing, and it is just Rangers fans in the replies when it will be like the worst player in the park and all that stuff, and it's like no, he's not. Like Callum McGregor, for his first like 20 Scotland caps or something, was completely anonymous. Was pretty much didn't do anything good or bad. The first time he really played well for me was out in Belgrade in that game that we qualified for the last one. And he's not missed a beat since then. He's been so good for so long, and yeah, he was really good. His use of the ball was just fantastic. Like at no point did I don't think he'd give it away. He was pulling out to the left. He was in the middle. Such a calm head, as all three that I mentioned were, to be honest. And the way that he works together with the other midfielders, and also whoever the fullbacks are. Now it's obviously his Celtic teammate this time, but no, he's had a absolutely brilliant campaign, and he's a player that just makes the team tick, and it's a player that Billy Gilmore will be, and Gilmore I'm a big fan of, but it's funny that I think we've got our wonder kid still in Gilmore, who is feted as that type of player and is that type of player, but McGregor does it all as well, and he maybe lacks some of the things that Gilmore does, because I think Gilmore's just got more of a kind of metronome quality to him, but he's keeping him out of the team, and kind of rightly so at the moment, and it's a really good quandary to be in, because you've probably got 4 or 5 pretty good central midfielders. Steve Clarke decided to try and pick as many central midfielders as they could in the team again last night, which I don't think. I mean, Stuart Armstrong, I didn't mention him. He had a quiet start to the game, but he got a goal, and I think
Talk that goal, Craig. Wow.
And he showed, and the reverse from McGinn. There's something really aesthetically pleasing about balls coming off an angle that you don't expect. It goes so far back. From McGinn, it was a really nice switch of play. From
almost as sexy as the goal against Republic of Ireland at Celtic Park, but
yeah,
the back heel is takes it above.
But Armstrong, I think, showed like he's still got it to offer, because I think he's one of the ones that you thought, oh, maybe he's going to be dropping out here, but on that evidence, I think he's still got something to offer. I think having experienced players in the squad helps, to be honest, because we've got a pretty young squad, and so having guys like Armstrong, McLean around, who have kind of been around the houses a bit, is not the worst thing.
McLean's going nowhere with Steve Clarke in charge. That man, I don't know what he has on him, but there's something.
Well, but he's also you hope it's not the David Marshall situation, where the guy that's kind of the hero to take you there then turns up at the tournament and
has a howler.
Yes, but it's harder for a midfielder to do that, you would have to guess, unless of course the penalty king becomes the penalty villain at some point. But so like there were things to like Nathan Patterson was hot and cold. I would say, like, I think he has a lot about him, but defensively he's not always the best. But I would say with Patterson, like, he did pretty well in that game there, and going forward, but defensively there was a couple of times he was sleeping, but he had a brilliant block just before half time, and they could have made it 3-2. So there's enough about Patterson. He's probably not going to be a starter, but he's definitely shown he's got enough about him. And I think that's it. Like McKenna is Scott McKenna. Like he shouldn't ever be really a first choice, but he's played both these games, which I found a bit odd. I thought Leon Cooper might have started last night, but I don't think Scott McKenna was really to blame for much. It's just that we're not as good a team with him there. So on the whole, like, there were enough positives to take out of the game, and I think the negatives were probably negatives that Steve Clarke could have told you about before he started the game. That namely, we don't have another good goalkeeper. Greg Taylor's not as good as Andy Robertson, and Jacob Brown is probably not as good as our first two choice strikers, and those were the things that were so noticeable. It was a bit like when you sometimes watch like the African Nations Cup or something, and you have like a team. I don't know why it's that tournament in particular this happens. And you have a team that has like 2 or 3 players that are playing for like Barcelona and Arsenal and Liverpool, and then their teammates are like from like the 3rd division in France. That's kind of what it looked like last night. Even though the players that were criticising, one of them is like a Scottish Cup winning goalkeeper who still plays for Hearts, played in Europe, or I think, and all the rest of it. The Celtic starting left back, who's won all the trophies, who has played in the Champions League this season, and a Premier League striker. That they shouldn't be like that, but I mean that's kind of how it felt. But like on the whole, I don't see it. I didn't leave that ground worried. I didn't leave that ground feeling anything, to be honest, which is is fine. That's kind of
soulless, Craig.
Yeah,
soulless.
That's how you'd like it to be. Because see if, and we've been there many times before. See if you have a dead rubber where you're out, like Norway had.
Stinker.
But there's also like at least a sense of like, oh, we're going to see what the next campaign has in store here.
Is there? But I don't think I've ever left with that feeling.
But we didn't have that either, because it was just like, well, we know what's in store. We've got a very good team. They're going to be good. We could have done with winning that game, but it didn't matter.
That Sunday night as well at 10 o'clock. You can't be asking folk to have a bit of a party at that time. You're saying that you left with no kind of feeling. I imagine Lauren Shanklin probably would have been in a similar boat. If he was leaving with a feeling, I would imagine it was frustration. You say that Jacob Brown's definitely behind top 2, obviously Dykes and Adams. Surely it ought to be behind Shanklin as well.
I think for going to the tournament, I would say so now. I wasn't sure about that before these games, but
really, like before this.
Well, because for what I said about Brown, like I think he's got
the unknown.
Yeah, he's got that, but he's also like he's playing at a much higher level than Shanklin. There's no doubt about that, and he did reasonably well at the championship level in England. Like he's still not a big goal scorer, but he was doing the business for Stoke enough that Luton wanted to sign him. And Shanklin is a brilliant goal scorer, but you don't know whether he's got the, I think they talked about it, and you don't know whether he's got the football to be able to stand out at that level. And then you've got Kevin Nisbet's the one who's probably potentially regretting moving south, but maybe not from his bank balance point of view, but it's probably taken him out of the game a wee bit. But that's your kind of situation that you're in. But Shanklin is never going to be able to start a game, I don't think. I think you'll be worried if you ever had to start Lauren Shanklin against anyone good. But coming off the bench, as we saw midweek, he's always going to offer you something in that he is a bit of a goal scorer, and your chances are fewer and further between at that level, but he can do that, and that's why he wouldn't. I didn't ever think he was really going to start the game last night, and indeed he didn't. I thought Dykes would have started again, to be honest, but I don't think what happened last night did him any harm, to be honest, in the sense that he probably offered more in the 4 minutes he was on the park than Brown did the whole night, which is, again, I feel bad about it because I think it was a young guy who put his all into that performance, Brown, but it just nothing happened for him. And Brown will probably play for Scotland many more times because, again, he's young. We don't have loads and loads of forward options, and it may just be that he just had a bad night. Aaron Hickey had a stinking night against Ukraine in the playoffs and has kind of gone from strength to strength since that. So I think Shanklin is now, just without doing anything last night, has now pushed himself ahead of Brown in the situation.
Pecking order.
Yeah, it's so hard to know what goes on in Steve Clarke's mind. I felt this when he was Kelly manager as well.
I was going to say, of all people, I was just going to give you at the end of this, right? You're not going to have a Steve Clarke living for a wee while, so I'm going to let you have one. But if one man should sort of be able to figure out what the hell's going on in Steve Clarke's mind, I would like to think it'd be you. But nobody has a bloody Scooby, do you?
No, because like there were games where it would be like you would be going through a spell where someone would be like our best player for several games, and then you would just the next game would be on the bench, and it's just like, but it always worked. And when it worked, like Eamon Brophy went through a spell where we were playing pretty well, we were scoring a lot of goals, he was involved. And then all of a sudden he had a wee run, but he was sitting on the bench, and you're like, and Lee Irwin, I think, came in the team is one of the examples, and Lee Irwin was a good player for us as well. You're just like, I wonder what's happening there, what's made him do this, because to my eye, the guy who was picking was playing pretty well, and there was almost like nobody knew where they stood. Now that's not the same with this Scotland team. There are 5 or 6 guys who will be playing if they are fit, but you can't really predict him in a number of ways. Like, none of the teams that he's picked, none of the decisions I would say he's made in this campaign have made the lick of sense. Like that's
He
something like
loves
Ewan
it.
Taylor mentions it all the time, but that substitution against Norway that ended up winning us the match, nobody thought that was a good idea.
That game, the Norway game, I was on the way to Elton John at the Hydro with my mum, and well, I knew I wasn't getting sent to Norway for the game, so I was like, right, it's fine. If I don't, I will actually go and see Elton John. We were at I don't know what is it, probably just like Quayside or something like that. It was at the Burger King there, and we were driving along there because we got through early, and I'm listening obviously on the radio, and bloody Kenny McLean come, and I went, right, mum, just turn the radio off because I do like driving with the football anyway. Thankfully, he kept it on because, and I remember looking at as you say, like the replies sort of thing, like when no matter how well Callum McGregor plays, Rangers fans will always say, oh, he's shite, he's shite. But no matter when Kenny McLean comes on, everybody goes, oh, for the love of God, Steve Clarke's lost his mind. Genius, absolute genius. And I feel now that I've went back on the promise that I made in June that I will never doubt Steve Clarke again. I need to remind myself of that because just what does he think? Well, it clearly worked.
Yeah, and that's that situation. Like, and it was the same. Yeah, I mean, and you talk about on that's 51 games as Scotland manager, and almost perfect. Obviously, yeah, the Ukraine one stings the most. I think like the Euros, we were probably not quite ready for that tournament. Yeah, but the Ukraine one, I mean, I'm watching them literally right now, giving Italy a game and try to send them out of the Euros, or send them into the playoffs, which would maybe be a nice thing for us. But we should have beaten Ukraine that night. We let the emotion of the situation get to us that night. That will be the only major regret I think he's had. I mean, the Euros is a regret, I suppose, but apart from that, to take, again, you just have to think about the context before he took over of that Kazakhstan game. That was literally like Kazakhstan away, San Marino. We beat San Marino 2-0, absolutely hoaching. Like, we scored quite late in that San Marino game to make it 2-0, and there was a spell where they were running through our midfield at will. And that was like with some of the guys that are playing, like Callum McGregor was playing in that game, John McGinn was playing in that game, I'm sure McTominay might have been as well. And you're like, to turn that round, yeah, you have to put a lot of it on the players, and we have some very, very good players now, and there's no getting away from that. But lots of teams with very, very good players don't qualify for tournaments. Norway have got very, very good players. We saw a wee bit of that last night. They're not going to the Euros. So a manager who's done that not just once for my national team, but also for my club team, it's kind of hard to kind of state again how much he turned around Kelly's fortunes as well. And so, yeah, there's very little that I can add to what I've probably bored everyone to tears with about him again. But I think he's earned the right to make his own decisions and be his own man, and I think we just have to trust that. It's not that you can't criticise it, because of course you can, and some of the decisions that he's made have been wrong, like not starting Stephen O'Donnell against Ukraine, but there are
absolutely,
after all that faith he put in him, that was the last time. But as it's turned out, he's mostly got everything right, so we just have to go with it, I think. And I think whatever 23 picks, people will moan about whoever's been left out, but the guys who have earned the right to get us there will all be there, and the ones that won't be will be the ones that are tweaking about the edges, like guys that didn't contribute that much to his qualifying. And yes, they might have something to offer, but it's not like John McGinn is suddenly going to get left out. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Bloody hope no. Who knows? Maybe he would pull a magnificent U-turn and bring in Stephen McGinn instead.
Yeah, you never know. If he can get himself back in the Falkirk team, then who knows? The sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit, exactly. And speaking about sky's the limit, I think we've just about rounded off as much as we possibly can from 3-3 game against Norway. Because as Craig says, it's just a strange game altogether, a strange atmosphere, a strange one to analyse. You can't be too critical because you just, well, as Craig rightly said, surely we won't be in such a position of such unlucky injury crisis. It's hitting us now. Is there something else you want to say on the game, Craig?
Oh, I was just thinking that the other thing, and it was the same with the England friendly, we are all about intensity. Like, everything that is good about this team is about intensity and that kind of pressure and stuff like that. And when that isn't there, it doesn't matter what happens. You can't fake that. You can't
Force it. Absolutely.
Most of what we've done has been playing at 110%. Like, if that, I know that's pathetic, and you can't get to 110% through anything other than like desire to be there. And in your head, you know that game doesn't matter that much. It wasn't even like the Denmark game. Say like the Denmark game, the last campaign, we needed to win that to get that home playoff, and that was a big incentive for that. And not that it worked out for us, but we needed something from that. Last night's game was actually a really weird situation because I'm not sure about it, but there was definitely an argument that being in pot 2 is actually worse than being in pot 3. So you had that situation where
I think it is.
I mean, you can see from the names. The names look harder in pot 3, but
they're there for a reason, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's hard to tell. Like, some of the, you can get a hard group wherever you go. Avoiding pot 4 is a big thing because it means that, again, unless you're unlucky and get like a good team that win a playoff out of that, you've got a chance of a team that you're ahead of someone in the season.
Craig, we might win a game.
Exactly, and so that's a big benefit. But at the very least, winning that game, going out to win that game, didn't really affect anything. So it was it's hard to be up for it, and especially against an opponent who I think are probably trying to prove a wee point. So it's
missing their big stars as well. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. So it was a very odd game on the whole, and a game that there's no way it would have panned out that way had it gone. Because it was like Steve Clarke when he was West Brom manager. He's the Alex Ferguson's
the Alex Ferguson
game, 5 each draw.
5 each. Never.
I think big Romelu Lukaku scored a hat-trick in that game, I think. But that's not something you associate with Steve Clarke as a manager, is these high-scoring draws. But yet, when the pressure's off, that's what he produces. Because I think the players are like, right, it must rub off. And he wasn't happy, I think, with the first half performance from his post-match comments. And you understand that, but he's not. I also don't think he's going to be holding it against the players exactly.
No, I don't think so. As we say, there will be between now and the summer. There's the draw at the beginning of December. There'll be plenty more coming from the terrace about who's making the squad, where we're going in Germany, all that sort of jazz. So do not think that your Scotland content is ending anytime soon. One thing that is finally coming to an end, though, if you can remember, I wasn't even a part of the podcast when this started. The 50 most memorable men's international games. Been doing this little series. Well, it's a very large series and a very extensive series. Craig, I think you told me before we came on, I think it started back on the 14th of January 2019. What the hell's been going on?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of one of these things that gets picked up and forgotten, and I've put it together. And we've done a few of these series, and it's always the same. Like they come and go a little bit. There are some that are still outstanding. I think Sean and Graham and I have still got to finish off our England elimination series as well. We mentioned that before, but we have got we kind of went out to do this, but we're nearly talking about 5 years ago. I think if you think back to January 2019, like the COVID hadn't happened, Steve Clarke wasn't Scotland manager, that Kazakhstan game had just happened. So, or maybe Steve Clarke.
Steve Clarke had just came in, no?
It just came. I was trying to think. Yeah, he was 2018. So but he had basically not taken charge of. He'd taken charge of a handful of games. We were already out of the automatic qualification for that Euros.
When we used to head out early, not qualify early, head out early.
We had obviously the playoff in the bag that ended up being much later than we thought it was going to be, but. That was when we started this. I was about to say the Kazakhstan game hadn't happened, then I remembered it was one of the games on the list, so it obviously had. But lots of games subsequently which would have been on the list, probably about 10.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Are not, because we didn't cover them, so we're getting to number 1 now.
Finally, I reckon this one will probably still be up there for a fair few. I was just actually on my way home from work today. I was with my pal, my colleague Sean, and we were talking about the campaign. He was there last night, obviously. Like I say, I wasn't, and he's been there through every game. And he said, like, what's the best game you've covered? It has to be Spain. And I think, like, for me, not even cover, just like being at that game, like working the game was unreal, but being at Hampden. But that's because I think I have to be, but I'm the only member of the terrace who cannot remember this game, has never remembered this game. I've had to tell the man himself who makes this game memorable, I don't remember you making this game memorable. And we are, of course, talking about James McFadden's winning strike in France. France 0, sorry, Scotland 1. We're going back to the 12th of September 2007, the eve of my 7th birthday. My God, I can't even remember my age there. Yeah, my goodness, the eve of my 7th birthday. So that is why I do not remember Faddy's strike. Craig, talk me through it.
So that would have been roughly the same age I was when we qualified for France 98, I suppose.
98. No, that makes me feel bad because you can remember qualifying for France 98.
My mum and dad took me to the game. I'm sure if you had been in Paris,
I think I was getting exactly. I think I was
yeah.
getting ready for my princess party or something like that. So
which that seems out of character for you, mate. It's not the vibe I've ever got.
I think I was more probably going to put on my Shinsuke Nakamura strip, but that sounds a bit more like it.
That would be about the right era for that goal against Man United. But yes, exactly. It was on that campaign. So to bring that into context, I just turned 18 just before this game. So like I'm August, so I just turned 18. This was the year I was just about to start uni. I don't know if this was Freshers Week or the week before Freshers Week.
My birthday was always Freshers Week. My first day at Freshers was my 18th birthday, so it probably could have been around then.
It was certainly around that time, and I remember with my pal who we went to all the home games in that campaign, and it was the first time that we would start going in the pub and all the rest of it, and so it was quite a memorable campaign in the sense that I went to the games with my mum and dad a lot, but this was the first time it was like with my pals, and there was 3 of us that would go to most of the games, and we would, as it cranked up the pressure, and then we had my pal came over to my house with some of my family were around as well when we watched this game. I think it was on BBC at the time, which I think that's true, or maybe it was on Sky. I don't remember, but it was on the telly anyway. But maybe it was on Sky because I think he didn't have Sky, so that would make sense as to why he came over to watch it. And we had a fantastic campaign. We'd obviously started off very strongly. We'd had a bit of a blow in losing out in Ukraine with when we'd had a suspension. Robbie Nielsen made his got 2 caps for Scotland, his first and his last in that game. And he but then we kind of bounced back. We'd lost out in Italy, but we'd won all the other games leading up to this, including we'd beaten France at home. And this was kind of building up to being like, right, I think in our head, we had 3 games left. We had France away, Georgia away, and Italy at home. And I think we were thinking, let's beat France. Even if we lose to France, if we win the other 2, we've got a good chance of qualifying here. And I think that's how we saw it. France had just been beaten in the World Cup final against Italy. So that was the 2 teams that were in our group, but they were a strong team at that point. They weren't as strong as they'd been, but some of the names in their team were pretty big. And that win at Hampden was a very much a backs to the wall situation where Gary Caldwell got the winner, and we've talked about that on this list, but God knows how many years ago it was. But it was very much a backs to the wall performance, and I remember because the biggest memory I have apart from the goal in that game is like for the last 20 minutes, every time one of our players headed a ball clear or punted it up the park, there was like massive eruptions of cheers. Such was the pressure we were under at the time. And so we went out to Paris for this game. I would say obviously quite on a high, but not really expecting much out of it. And that wasn't helped because Darren Fletcher went off after 25 minutes, and you turn to the bench, and who's coming on? Stephen Pearson. Now,
Whoa, what?
Stephen Pearson had at that point just, I think it was, had just 1 promotion. He scored the goal at Wembley that took Derby into the Premier League. I think it was that season. And so he was and this was the season where Derby were god awful, like they had a record terrible.
This is the record, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's this season, but Pearson had been there and had worked his way back into the Scotland squad as a result. But you're looking at Darren Fletcher going off and Stephen Pearson coming on, and it's not really filling you with much excitement. But Pearson was superb in this game. So much running, all of the midfield. The one thing I remember about this game is Barry Ferguson, Pearson, Brown, and Hartley all started, and it was kind of a narrow 4 across the middle, and the 4 of them were just running and running and running and running. And Lee McCulloch was out on the kind of left wing, because I don't know, you'll probably not remember this, Amy, I guess from what you said. Throughout that campaign, Lee McCulloch was used as like a left winger, but he was like a target man. So it was just like pinging diagonals at him.
Yes, I know this more again from the belly of the beast. I have spent Lee McCulloch, great company, for an open all mics and sports scene sort of shift. So I have seen him sort of compare what he does to, or what he done, sorry, to games that we have been at. Yes,
and he was, I mean, he was so good at it, and it was a big part of that campaign. So we had a pretty strong midfield performance, and Pearson was the one who stood out, to the point where I think Arsene Wenger had been covering, he was still Arsenal manager at the time, had been covering this game for French TV and was just raving about him. And for about the next year, the papers would be linking him with a move to Arsenal. Now, obviously, I don't think Arsene Wenger was at any point actually realistically signing Steven Pearson, but
his name came out his mouth. Steven Pearson.
I think Arsene Wenger was always a pretty big admirer of Scottish football, as was Gerard Houllier for some reason. I don't know if they were influenced.
Yeah, Gerard Houllier, spoke to Jock Brown about that.
But at that point, they were like, that was kind of where we were sitting. And I think, just to go through the team, Craig Gordon was in goals, which always helps. Like how many games in this list has Craig Gordon played in? Probably most of them. Alan Hutton, Stephen McManus and Davy Weir, and then Graham Alexander was playing left back.
Graham Alexander playing left back.
So Graham Alexander won 40
one of
caps
the high
for Scotland.
One of the high scoring defenders.
Yes, but not for Scotland, because he never scored.
Not for Scotland, no.
But he was one of these players, like, he was the best penalty taker, basically, you'd ever see, and I don't think Scotland ever got a penalty while he was on the park, so he never scored for Scotland. But he played left back, and he was one who played it pretty much everywhere for Scotland, because he definitely played right back, which was his natural position, and he played centre mid later in his career. But so that was the back 4, and then, yeah, as I said, the 4 in the midfield, and McFadden was given the nod up front. I think Kenny Miller was either injured or suspended for that game, because Miller didn't feature, and so it was McFadden who was asked to kind of do the graveyard shift up front, basically. And because I think some of the games we'd started with Miller up top and McFadden deeper, but we didn't have that option here, so it was very much like 4 at the back, 5 across the middle, and kind of give McFadden run around a lot and hope for a bit of magic, and obviously that's what we ultimately got. McFadden probably touched the ball about 5 times in the whole game. It was very much a backs to the wall performance. It was a better backs to the wall performance than the home game, I would say. The away game, France had, to my memory, much fewer chances than the home game, but they did have chances, and Craig Gordon made a few good saves. But then that goal from McFadden is just so iconic. Now, Joel Sked will always say it was a goalkeeping error, which it was from Landro, because he should save that. But I think he's taken aback. Of course,
should. Anything from that distance has to be saved.
He's taken aback, obviously, a little bit by it, in the sense that he gets the ball into his, into his body. He takes a turn. He's got all the space in the world to turn and hit it, and he kind of just does. The only goal I can think of that's kind of a bit like it, and which still appears on the SPFL Twitter on a regular basis, is Suleiman Koulibaly at Celtic Park for Killie.
Oh, of course you'd bloody bring that up.
He just gets. I mean, we lost that game about 5-1 or something.
5-1, I think 6-1.
He gets the ball just in all that space, and it's almost like, I've not got any other player near me, I might as well just shoot, and he does, and it flies into the top corner, basically, or not the top corner. It gets parried into the top corner by the goalkeeper, and we obviously saw it out at that point. And it's one of those games where at that point, you think there is no way we are not qualifying for this tournament. That was what we thought. Had we gone to Georgia and won the next game, we would have been in a situation where basically we would have needed to draw with Italy at home to be sure of qualification. But even if we lost that game, I think France is still to play Italy at that point, and France had Ukraine away. Like, there was a lot of games that could have gone our way, a bit like this group that we've just had.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it was very much like, okay, we've set up this situation, we're probably going to do this. And it was such a hard group, because I talked about France and Italy having played in the World Cup final, Ukraine had been quarter-finalists at that World Cup as well. And so to have all three in our group, the luxury that we have now of not being fourth seeds for a group is that wouldn't happen. But we then built that situation where we'd given ourselves the best chance. We've already talked about Georgia. We don't need to talk about it more.
No.
But that was why it was such a big game. And the only other thing I always remember about it is when we like the newspaper running that when James McFadden like came back to his mum, he just like after the game to celebrate, he just wanted a rolling sausage and a bottle of iron brew, which I thought was very it's very like
It's
of
so
the man as well,
believable.
because he
It's so
seems very,
believable.
you know, he's not exactly a Billy Big Time footballer. I
No,
don't think if you
he's
met him
not.
you would know he was. Like I've never
Yeah,
properly met him, but
so I'm in his company quite a lot, and like I say, I've brought it up to him, and we have a right joke in it on a Friday night. He is so down to earth. It's frightening, and I think I don't know if I appreciate it more or I underappreciate it more. And I think this is perhaps what Craig Fowler, because I did, and I understand, because I'm sure many listeners will be thinking, what's the bloody point in having the only one not alive for this goal, this game to be talking on it? But Craig's just made me feel like I was there, and that was always the plan. But I don't like. We'll go to games, and I'll walk into stadiums with Faddy, and everyone comes up to him, and I mean like grown men. And it's probably because anyone my age and younger, and me and my friends, we talk about it because it's very much a landmark, and especially when you work in the industry that we do. You sort of go like, right, so how old are you? How young are you? Well, I can't remember Faddy's goal, and that's when you go, oh, Jesus, suffering or whatever. That's the usual response. So I don't know if like I say, I don't know if I appreciate or underappreciate it more, because I totally, obviously, growing up, I feel like I was there because I'd seen it that many times by the age that you start remembering things, and it's talked about obviously within the pub, on supporters buses, everything, everywhere. But I don't think like, and again, I've slightly sort of said this to him and managed to bring him down a peg or two. Don't think like I ever like idolised James McFadden because I wasn't there for his best. Um, and I think now I kind of wish that I did, because I probably do more now than ever, because I'm just like, oh my God, so many people genuinely, you were the best thing for them in about 20 years. And you have no idea how much joy you've brought to people. And he's just the coolest, calmest customer ever. And I wish he was a bit of a prick, just to sort of go like, yeah, you deserve to have a bit of an ego and a bit of an arrogance. Like, you'd done that. You were capable of doing that. And he's just so nonchalant about everything. Like he'll go and say, we'll go to Fourth Bank and he'll cover Uni Stirling against Albion Rovers and just go like, yes, football. Like, mate, you scored against France.
yeah,
Go
and
and
not
live
just
off
France.
it.
He scored in a
Exactly,
qualifier against the
exactly.
Netherlands. He scored so many
We
big
can
goals for
rattle them
Scotland.
off, exactly.
And
Not a one-off.
And the thing, I think that's kind of the type of player he was. For you'll probably remember his later days when he was back at Motherwell and stuff.
Motherwell,
Maybe even a wee bit of his kind of later Scotland career, his time at Everton. I don't know how much of that you remember, but at that point when he broke through, because he was capped while he was still a Motherwell player as a youngster, and he was like the great white hope when Scotland was stinking. Like, and he was the one that was turning
Everything
out. And
rided on him,
yeah, he had his mohawk, red mohawk when he came through.
Doesn't have that now.
No, he certainly doesn't. And he came through and he burst onto the scene, and Darren Fletcher came around at the same time. And those two are kind of inextricably linked when it comes to Scotland careers. They both obviously are cut a wee bit shorter than they should have been as well by various off-field factors like injury or illness kind of related things and stuff like that. And they were like kind of breath of fresh air that came into that Scotland team under Vokes to start with, and basically carried us into that playoff. Like, Fletcher scored the goal against Lithuania, it's been talked about here. McFadden got the one in the playoffs. Like, they were the two guys that came into the team, and they're like, funnily enough, I think Stephen Pearson had one of his first Scotland appearances in that Netherlands playoff as well, to bring it full circle. But McFadden was pretty a humble but talented player, and I think that's what you got. He exuded like calmness, confidence, and quality. And in this current team, he wouldn't stand out because we've got lots of players who have like those same attributes. But at that time, we had a lot of garbage, to be honest, like went about him, or like trials with no ability, no major ability. Like, I'm putting down Kenny Miller a little bit because Kenny Miller had a very, very good Scotland career there, but Kenny Miller had. Sorry, I'm talking about this game. I'm distracted.
I gather there's something happening in the Italy game.
A big penalty shout in like 3 minutes into stoppage time. I don't think it was a penalty, but we'll wait and see. They'll look at it. But sorry, that very
live
unprofessional.
VAR.
I don't think he'll get given, but it could be.
Oh.
Sorry, this is terrible. Well, I think they might
It's
give
very,
this. We'll
very interesting.
But anyway, yeah. So like, yeah. Now, like, Kenny Miller was a good player, worked very hard for Scotland, did a lot of running, scored a lot of goals, but now they're playing on, so no penalty. So they like, there was a lot of
James McFadden was the shining light.
Yeah, he was the one that stood out, and that's why I was at the Croatia game at the Euros, and I was sitting up in the kind of posh seats up the top because I was. Because UEFA sent me an email and were like, we'll give you a ticket if you pay us €120 or whatever the hell it was. And I was like, well,
I'm there, boy.
I might as well, because I don't know how many other chances I'll get to do this. And so I did. And he was sitting doing his BBC comms duties at the other end. I was in about 45 minutes before kickoff, I think. And he, obviously a few people spotted him and someone shouted him. And I thought it was maybe one of his pals or something came over but it was just someone wanting to get their photo taken with him. Yeah. And so they came along, and he was basically queued up at the end of the line with like dozens of people coming up one by one to get their photo taken with him. And I could actually see whoever he was working with on the BBC, like, kind of looking over at him, being like, James, you're probably kind of on air now. But he couldn't drag himself away. And so, yeah, I think it's a sort of, I mean, that's why he's beloved, in this game contributes to that. Now, I think the McLean one is probably going to usurp it as a big away moment, in the sense that the McLean one counted
actually
for something.
Got us somewhere, yeah.
And the fact it was 2 goals in such quick succession, but this was France away. Like, they were a very good team. I mean, yeah, just to run through their team, just to round it off, they had Landro and goals. Landro and goals, who was the keeper who sold the jerseys. Lassana Diarra was the right back. He was playing for Chelsea at the time. He played for Arsenal. He wasn't the best, but he played for Real Madrid as well. So he was, we're still talking.
Just not the best, Craig.
Yeah,
not the best.
But like, he wasn't. Thuram, Escudi, and Abidal was the rest of the back four. Escudi again was not really one of the better French centre halves. Again, was playing La Liga and all the rest of it. Then Ribery, Vieira, Makaleli, Malouda was the midfield 4. How many Champions Leagues between them?
They're not getting into McGinn, McTominay and McGregor, though. That's
true. And then Trezeguet and Anelka up front. So a strong team. And then they chucked on a pretty young Karim Benzema, and Samir Nasri came on.
Who?
So
huge now.
And our subs were Pearson, as I mentioned, and we brought in Gary O'Connor from McFadden for the last 15 minutes. And we had Jay McEvely, Gary Caldwell, Chris Boyd, and Sean Maloney sitting on the bench just in case, but we didn't.
Just in case. Didn't need them.
Chris Boyd was never getting near that pitch, was he? Like, so that was where we were. So it was a massive moment, a massive game, and like iconic game. But I think since this list started, it probably would still get voted number 1, or it would be certainly close to number 1. But since this list has come out, the team has transcended that. We don't need a brilliant but ultimately futile victory, because we've got now many
meaningful victories,
meaningful wins. So there's a lot to be said about that, and it's a nice way to round it off. I did think, because we usually do this, the number 1 in the charts.
I was looking.
Did you look this up?
I did. I was looking.
Do you know this song? I do, and I hope you do. But yeah, I just like to check. I assume you will, but
well, I'm assuming it's the same song, but yeah, Sean Kingston, Beautiful Girls.
Yeah.
Yes, so absolutely. I'm not Craig.
Well, I don't know.
I don't remember it. Oh, at that time I wouldn't, but I think it is one that has lived on very much. That has grown up with me. I would absolutely say the movie though. Well, I know the film, but I feel I might have the wrong one, because in September I don't really know why this would have been released. The list, maybe I was in the wrong list. I had Halloween for the movie. I was also, as Tony Anderson always says, and I've done a few of these Scotland pods before. Again, I've not really been alive for any of them, so I rely on Tony bringing up scandals and all of that. And I was looking for it, and I think because it was long ago enough that, as Craig Kieran said, they didn't have Instagram, but I don't think there was as much, nothing involving anything juicy. Tony's came out with some crackers before, but these were all quite mundane, quite boring ones.
I mean, we could. That France team, I don't think had much going for them unless you bring Benzema into
I
it.
know,
Which,
and I thought, oh,
uh,
that's a slippery slope.
yeah, we don't want to get too involved in that. And I've got the UK box office #1 was apparently Run Fat Boy Run. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Run, Fat Boy, Run.
Was Simon Pegg was in it. It was about.
I know who Simon Pegg is.
It was about a marathon. Like he was running a marathon, something to do with to win back his girl or whatever it was. But anyway, that was an all right film. I would say. But anyway, that was the box office that I saw for 3 weeks. But
that's fair, to be fair. That's better than Halloween.
It's always hard this with the music, Amy, because it's like I know that song is like, for me, it's like that's a very well known song. But I'm like, I teach students all the time, right, and they're about your age, a wee bit younger than you.
Yeah, a wee bit younger than me now. Yes.
I put music references like in through like some of my slides.
I think I would appreciate it a little bit more than them. I think
they like it. It's good. Like I get them guessing who the band is and stuff now. Like as in, I don't
the
ask
Rolling Stones.
I don't ask them to do that, but they now are doing that. But at the same time, I'm like, sometimes these must go way over their heads. So I try to be I'm trying to find
cautious
bands that they still know who they are. So it's like
Oasis.
Well, no, that's what I mean. If I do Oasis, like, I'm a massive Oasis fan. I grew up not grew up with Oasis, but you know what I mean, because they were still
absolutely
at the tail end. But I know people know who Oasis are, but it's not like they're a band of the time. So I'm trying to get the balance right with that. And so I'm like, I don't know what people know nowadays. I did a pub quiz for work, and again, that would have been last year. And I had it was a Scottish song round I did. And I had like what I think are iconic songs in there, and like nobody knew them. And
I'd have been all over that.
So that's why I was asking. And then number 2 in the charts was "Hey There, Delilah" by Plain White T's, which is very much a song
that song.
That ages it, I think, very much.
Absolutely, that was the reason that I know that song and love that song is that we had a guitar hero at that time growing up. And that was the song that we obviously got the guitar hero a little bit later. I think maybe 2 years later or whatever. But that was the song sort of like inbuilt into it. It was "Hey There, Delilah" by the White Stripes song. That is very, you're bang on. That is a song of the times, I would say.
It's funny, I had my 10th wedding anniversary like not that long ago, and I decided for the wee playlist for the car for the way down, we were going back to where we got married, just for down in Ayr for
old time's sake.
Just for a night basically, and I thought I'll put on the top 30 or whatever from the day we got married, and some amount of shite is all I will say. Like, you remember it all, but I was like, I don't think I would listen to much of this music now, and that's not a reflection on the style of the music, but rather just like
the time.
This hasn't aged all that well.
It had to have been a strange time though. 2012, 2013, and that was when I was starting high school. That was like, it was a weird sort of phase. We're in a new decade, don't know what we want to be, leaving behind the noughties, not quite found a style yet. There was a lot of shite back then.
Yes, and there still
But there was, well, very much so, but there wasn't any shite on that night in Paris. James McFadden tops the lot with that goal. And I think that is fair to say the most memorable at the time of compilation.
when the listeners voted on it in 2018, it was 2018.
I don't think I would have just been able to drink back then. My God, that's how long ago it was. But I'm glad we've finally been able to bring an end to that, and we've also about to bring an end to this podcast where Craig Anderson has absolutely carried us through. He's going to need to go for a very, very large glass of water, and he's managed to do so while keeping up to date with there. He's got it with him. That's
now we're on video. I can demonstrate.
You can show it. You can show
it. Sparkling raspberry and strawberry or something.
Oh, stunning stuff! That's what you're wanting. And he's also managed to do so, as I say, watching Ukraine, Italy as well. So that's a multi-talented man. If you ever did,
and a 0-0 draw. So
so it was worth it.
Ukraine probably should have won. They probably deserved it, but they didn't win and they didn't qualify. We might still see them through the playoffs, but
hope no.
Yes, but yeah, that's where we are. So I try my best. As every listener will know, I like talking anyway, so it's the easiest thing in the world for me to do it.
Suits me. That's the ideal podcast guest. And as ever, if you want to hear more of Craig Anderson, do check out everything Terrace related. And if you haven't already, also subscribe to the Patreon so we can keep delivering series that last about 5 years. Because if no, then Craig can't do it. He can't come up with these great ideas. But until the next series and until the next podcast, take care and we'll see you soon.